Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we are finally finishing Chapter 6. That's right, we're covering word problems in perimeter and area. Now, I know this is never anyone's favorite section of any chapter, but as you know, this is probably one of the most important parts of any chapter because you'll see these a lot in tests, in the long answer questions, and you'll see them during mid-years and finals. So we are going to take our time and go over every scenario that we might see in terms of word problems. All right? Now, before we actually do that, let's talk about understanding the situation because as it says up top, understanding the situation is key. So what I mean by that is once you read the question, you have to essentially know, well, do I find perimeter for this question or do I find area? Now there might be other things that you have to do, but that is the first step as you'll see after. All right, so let's talk about how we can actually train our brain to detect which one we have to find. So if the question is describing something that's along an edge or along a side or around a side, right? Any other synonyms of these words, you'll need to find perimeter. So some examples of this is fencing, right? Because fencing is around a yard. Roof gutters are along the edge of a house. A picture frame, of course, is around either a painting or a picture. So as you see more of these, you'll understand and you'll automatically kind of click that that is perimeter. Now, for area, the question is going to be describing something that is covering something else. All right, so for example, we have grass, which covers the field, carpeting that covers the floor, wrapping paper that covers the gifts, and paint that covers a wall. Now let's try some sample scenarios here. We've got a soccer pitch or a field, and we're going to look at some scenarios that I'm going to give you, and you're going to try to guess if I want you to calculate the area or if I want you to calculate the perimeter. All right, so this is kind of like a mini quiz. See if you understand already the basic idea of breaking down the question. So first one, how much white paint is needed to make the lines along the field? So I'm talking about the end lines and side lines. The end lines being on the side of where the goalkeeper is. So we've got one end line here, one end line here. And then the sidelines, of course, are on the side of the field, one on top, one at the bottom. All right, so what am I asking here? Am I asking for perimeter or area? So I'm going to give you about 5 seconds to think about it, and then I'll give you the answer. Now, if you guess perimeter, that is correct. Of course, all I'm looking for is how much white paint is going along each side of this field. All right, so again, the key word here was along, could have been around, same thing. All right, let's look at scenario 2. How much grass is needed to cover the entire field? Again, I'll give you 5 seconds. If you guessed area, that's correct. Now, again, the key word being cover, right? So it's covering the entire field. The field which has a height dimension and, of course, a length dimension. Third scenario, what will it cost to paint the lines around the goalkeeper area? So if you don't know what the goalkeeper area is, it's essentially around here. So we have one on the left here, and of course the same thing on the right. So what am I asking here? Perimeter or area? 5 seconds. And that's right. We're asking for perimeter. It's the same idea as the first scenario, except now we're looking at a very specific part of the field. And I gave this scenario because I wanted you to realize that some questions might only ask you one specific part or one specific area, like this question is asking. Of course, these examples didn't have any actual numbers. This was just for you to test your understanding of the scenarios. So let's start with the actual examples. We're going to look at 3 types. This is what I've broken it down into. All right, so we're going to start with type 1 over here, our easiest type and one that you'll see quite often. What I call this one, it's how much will this cost? You'll understand what this means in a brief second. So here's my example. Xavier wants to buy fencing for his backyard that measures 25 meters by 15 meters. Now let's pause, because I have to explain that when we describe a shape like this, so when I say 25 by 15, I automatically am talking about a rectangle. I wouldn't be talking about a triangle. I'd need more detail than this. So whenever you hear X meters by Y meters, right, you automatically should know that that's a rectangle. All right, so let's finish off the question. If the fencing costs $2.50 per meter, how much will it cost him in total? All right, so what I'm asking here is not necessarily perimeter and area. We'll need that, but what I'm asking is the total cost. So let's break it down into our 3 steps. Step 1, determine if we want perimeter or area. So think about it. If I want fencing, is the fencing going to be laid down on the grass, or it's going to go around the backyard? Of course, it's going to go around the backyard, so I'm talking about perimeter. That's what I need. So step 2, let's find the perimeter of the backyard. And that's simply by, since it's a rectangle, adding up all 4 sides. So this is what my equation is going to look like. Perimeter of the backyard is equal to 25 plus 25 plus 15 plus 15. Do not forget that there's 4 sides. Don't just add 25 by 15. Now, easy enough, 80 meters is my total perimeter. Now, my 3rd step, and this is where I'm going to actually be answering my question, is by finding the cost. So all I have to do, since I know we have 80 meters here, and I know it's $2.50 per meter, well, all I have to do is multiply my cost per meter by the actual amount of meters that I have, right? My total perimeter. And then when I do that, I get $200. And then my last thing, if needed, is I write my answer. It'll cost $200 to fence his backyard. Okay, so let's look at type 2. How much to cover this, but not that? And you'll recognize this type of question. All right, so give it a second. Melanie's kitchen measures 8 meters by 6 meters. Her counter takes up an area of 12 meters squared. How much flooring is needed for the rest of the kitchen? So automatically in your head, the wheel should be turning. First off, remember what I told you in type 1. When we have 8 meters by 6 meters, right, X meters by Y meters, you are always referring to a rectangle. Right, now second thing, we are given area for the counter, but that's not what I want. I want to find out how much flooring we need for the kitchen itself. Now, you should know that the flooring, let's say we're talking about tiles, you are not going to be putting tiles on the counter. That part is not covered by the flooring. So essentially, right, we're doing a shaded region question. So let's start with our step 1, determine if we want perimeter and area. Of course, it's flooring. We're working with tiles, whatever. It is going to be area. Right? We're covering both a portion of the kitchen that has both the dimensions of length and height. So of course, area. Now, what I suggest, and you don't have to do this, draw a little diagram for this. It might help you. I know it's going to help me to explain this situation, so take the 2 seconds that it takes to draw 2 little rectangles here, and yeah, you might find it more useful than you think. So again, I do not want the counter area. This is not where I'm going to be putting any flooring. I'm not going to be putting any tiles here. It's going to be a countertop, but no tiles, not floor tiles. What I want to know is the area of this blue part, right? So that's my shaded region. So I'm essentially doing a shaded region question, but in word problem format. So step 2, find the area of the shapes given. So the area of the kitchen, since it's a rectangle, base times height, 8 times 6 in this situation, multiply that and we get an area of 48 meters squared. Now the counter, luckily for us, is already given as 12 meters squared. So we kind of saved that step. In some questions, you might have to actually calculate that area. So that's not too complicated. All right, so third step, you find the area of the actual flooring, right? The amount of tiles. So again, we're going to do the area of the flooring is equal to the area of the kitchen, the whole thing, minus the area of the counter. So we're kind of cutting this part out. So that's why we're subtracting. When we do that, plug in our numbers, 48 minus 12, we get an answer of 36 meters squared. And again, that's my answer. Around here, the tiles are going to take an area of 36 meters squared, and that's my answer. You'll need 36 meters squared of flooring. Type 3. How many of this can fit into that? So a square plate has a side length of 18 centimeters. A sandwich is 8.5 centimeters by 10 centimeters. How many sandwiches can we fit on the plate without any overlap? So this essentially means we can't stack the sandwiches, okay, if we lay them flat. So again, step 1, determine if we want perimeter and area. And of course, it is area. And the reason why area in this case, it's a little bit harder to kind of distinguish, but think about it. We are covering the plate with sandwiches. So it's the same thing as saying we are covering the field with grass, right? We want area, not perimeter. We're not cutting the pieces of sandwiches and putting it around the plate. That's not what we're doing. If you do that, that's really kind of weird and not a very efficient way of eating a sandwich. Okay, so let's actually start by finding the area of the shapes given. So we have a square plate. We're going to work with that first. That's our larger shape. So the square plate is 18 squared. Why? Well, because you know that the formula or the equation for a square is s squared, s being side length. All the sides are the same. So of course, in this case, 18 squared gives me an answer of 324 centimeters squared for the area. Now, the next part is my sandwich, and that's simply base times height. Of course, we've got a rectangle here. You know what a piece of bread looks like, and we know that it is 8.5 times 10, which gives us an area of the sandwich of 85 centimeters squared. Now, my third step, we're actually going to find how many sandwiches fit on the plate. So what we're going to do is we're going to see how many times 85 centimeters squared, right, which represents one sandwich, can fit onto a plate that has an area of 324 centimeters squared. So all we have to do is divide, and we get an answer of 3.81 sandwiches. So that's how many sandwiches fit on there. Now, depending on the situation, sometimes the teacher will want the full, right? Will want the actual decimal numbers in here. But some teachers will say, depending on the situation again, how many full sandwiches. There might be some area left over where it's not covered, but we're not going to cut a sandwich into 0.81, right? We're going to just keep it at 3. You want a full number. So my answer here would be 3 full sandwiches fit on the plate. All right, so these are my 3 types, my 3 major types. Some are going to be simpler, some are going to be slightly more difficult. They might mix the types, but take your time. We'll go over some examples in class, and we're going to work on this for a couple of classes. All right, guys, so come join the Zoom call. I'll see you in a bit. All right, bye, everyone.